I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I have been married to Amanda for 6 years. We had built a life together, or so I thought. Everything seemed fine until the day I noticed the first cracks in our seemingly perfect marriage. It was subtle at first, a change in her routine, her sudden late nights, and the way she started getting more dressed up for these girls' nights out. I was the supportive husband, encouraging her to have fun with her friends, never suspecting it would lead to this. One evening, as I was finishing up some work from home, I got a text from one of her friends. It was strange because Amanda had left her phone on the kitchen counter and it lit up with a message. Curiosity got the better of me and I glanced at the screen. It was from a number I didn't recognize, but the message was clear. "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll pick you up at 8." My heart sank. Amanda had said she was having dinner with her friends, and I couldn't shake the sick feeling in my stomach. I brushed it off, thinking it was just a simple misunderstanding. Maybe it was a mistake, but the next day my instincts kicked in. I started paying closer attention to her behavior and began to notice so many inconsistencies. She was spending more time on her phone, often texting in a hurry whenever I entered the room. The nights out turned into weekends away, and the excuses piled up. Work conference, brunch with the girls, and sometimes simply, "I need some time alone." The breaking point came one Friday night. Amanda had claimed she was going to a party for a work colleague. I felt uneasy, so I decided to follow her. I parked a few blocks away and waited. My heart raced as I watched her walk into a nightclub. My gut told me something was off. The place was packed, and I tried to keep my distance while still getting a good view. Minutes later, I saw him, the nightclub promoter Tony, with his slick hair and flashy clothes. I watched my wife laugh and flirt with him, her hand resting on his shoulder. I felt a mix of anger and despair as I realized this was no work party. They were clearly more than just friends. I left the nightclub, my mind spinning. I drove aimlessly for a while before heading home. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, and my heart felt like it was shattering into pieces. How could she do this to me? I had given her everything. When Amanda finally came home, she was tipsy, giggling, and completely unaware of what I had just seen. I confronted her, my voice shaking with rage and hurt. "Where were you?" I demanded. She paused, the confusion on her face evident. "I told you, Jake, it was a work party. Why do you always have to be so dramatic?" She replied, rolling her eyes. That was when I knew I couldn't let this slide. I needed to confront her with what I had seen, but the way she dismissed my feelings only fueled the fire. I could feel my chest tightening, and I was ready to explode. "Stop lying to me, Amanda. I saw you with Tony. Don't you dare deny it," I said, my voice loud and filled with anger. She froze, her eyes wide in shock. And for a moment I thought she might confess. But then she recovered. "Jake, you're being ridiculous. It was nothing. You're overreacting." Her denial hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt betrayed and belittled all at once. The emotional impact of that moment was overwhelming. I had gone from the man who loved her deeply to a mere shadow of my former self. How could she be so callous? As I stared into her eyes, searching for the woman I fell in love with, I realized I wouldn't be able to trust her again. The feelings of anger morphed into sadness. I knew I had to make a decision. I was done being the fool in this twisted game. I had to think about my own future now. What happened next would forever change the course of my life, but I was determined not to let her actions define me. I had my own plans, and I was ready for a new chapter. The aftermath of that night hit me like a tidal wave. After confronting Amanda, a strange numbness settled over me. I didn't sleep at all. Instead, I paced around the house, replaying every moment in my mind like a broken record. I felt betrayed and foolish, caught off guard by the woman I had trusted more than anyone else. The following days were a blur. Amanda acted as if nothing had happened. She floated around the house, making small talk and keeping her phone close as if it were her lifeline. I tried to engage, to act like everything was normal, but my heart wasn't in it. Each smile she flashed felt like a dagger through my chest. I could barely stand to look at her, let alone pretend that our marriage was still intact. Every time her phone buzzed, I felt a rush of anxiety. I knew deep down that I couldn't stay in this situation any longer. I needed to find a way to regain control, and I needed a plan. I had always been the dependable husband, the guy who supported her dreams, but now I felt like a stranger in my own home. One night, while Amanda was out for another of her girls' nights, I took the time to gather my thoughts. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet and sat down with my laptop. I started to map out a strategy for my life moving forward. I didn't want to wallow in self-pity. I wanted to create something that was entirely mine. I had always wanted to start my own business but had put it on the back burner for years. I had dreams of starting a small bar, something cozy and inviting, where people could come together and share stories over drinks. Why not? If Amanda could break our vows so easily, I could break free and build something new. I began researching everything I could about the bar industry, what it took to get started, the licenses I would need, the costs involved. I poured my heart into this project as I realized that my life was about to change drastically. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I would build my own empire, a place that represented who I was and what I could accomplish without Amanda dragging me down. After a week of planning, I felt more energized than I had in months. I even came up with a name for my bar, Revenant. It would symbolize my rebirth, my rise from the ashes of our crumbling marriage. I scheduled meetings with potential investors, scouted locations, and even began drafting a business plan. I could see my vision coming to life. The day I signed the lease for the space was surreal. I remember standing in the empty room, imagining the laughter and conversations that would fill it. I felt a rush of excitement as I envisioned the successful bar I would create. This would be my world, one where I had complete control, with no lies or betrayal. Amanda was still oblivious to my plans. Whenever she mentioned her nights out with friends, I would nod and smile, but inside I was plotting my own escape. I had no intention of sharing my dreams with her, not anymore. I wanted to keep my success entirely separate from her. But as my plans solidified, I realized I was still living in the same house with her, and I couldn't keep up this charade forever. I felt a mix of dread and anticipation every time I laid in bed next to her. I knew it was only a matter of time before I had to drop the bombshell about my newfound ambition. But I also knew I needed to let her think everything was fine for just a little longer. I had to make sure my business was set in stone before I confronted her again. I needed my life to be fully in my hands before I made the next move. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my identity and making a life that I could be proud of without her. I was done being a passive observer in my own life. The emotional impact of knowing Amanda had betrayed me was still heavy, but each passing day I focused on my plans chipped away at the sorrow. I could feel the anger morphing into determination. I was no longer the man she could manipulate. I was ready to take charge and nothing was going to stop me. I was building something for myself, and Amanda would never have a say in it. I would make sure of that. As I dove deeper into my plans for Revenant, I began to feel a sense of purpose that I hadn't experienced in a long time. My days were filled with meetings, renovations, and late-night brainstorming sessions. I even enlisted the help of my friend Mark, who had experience in the bar scene. He was excited to pitch in and I welcomed the camaraderie. But the nights at home with Amanda were still a struggle. She remained blissfully unaware of my transformation. I'd often come home late, saying I was busy with work and she would accept it without question. I could see the frustration building in her eyes, but I didn't care. I was finally doing something for myself, and it felt exhilarating. One night after a particularly long day of meetings, I returned home to find Amanda sprawled on the couch, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. She looked up at me, her expression a mix of annoyance and curiosity. "You've been working late a lot lately. Is everything okay?" she asked, feigning concern. "Just busy with some projects," I replied casually, hoping she wouldn't press for more details. I didn't want to share my plans with her, not yet. "Projects? Like the ones you've been talking about?" she prodded, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. "You know, I thought we were supposed to be partners in this marriage." I could feel my temper flaring at her words. "Partners? Amanda, if you really cared about this marriage, you wouldn't have cheated on me." Her face fell, and for a moment I thought I might see regret, but she quickly masked it with defensiveness. "That was a mistake, Jake. I told you it was nothing. Why can't you just let it go?" "Let it go?" I scoffed. "You expect me to just forget that you were screwing around with some guy while I was working my ass off to provide for us?" She rolled her eyes and returned to her phone, dismissing me like I was an annoyance. I could feel the anger boiling inside, but I took a deep breath and walked away. I wasn't going to let her drag me back into that pit of despair. I had more important things to focus on. As Revenant started taking shape, I found myself pouring everything I had into it. I had chosen a prime location downtown, and the renovations were coming along nicely. I had even secured a liquor license, which was a huge milestone. The excitement of seeing my dream becoming a reality drowned out the turmoil at home. But the night I received a call from my contractor changed everything. He informed me that my business partner, Mark, had crossed some serious boundaries. He had been caught taking supplies for his own side project without permission. I felt my heart drop. I had trusted him, and now I felt betrayed yet again. I confronted Mark the next day. "What were you thinking?" I demanded, packing in my office space, which was still half empty with boxes and construction debris. "It was just a few things, Jake." "I didn't think it would matter that much," he replied defensively. "Of course it matters. This isn't just a hobby for me, it's my life. If you can't respect that, then I don't want you involved." He looked taken aback, and I could see the realization hit him that I wasn't the same guy he used to know. I had changed, and I wasn't about to let anyone undermine my vision for Revenant. I kicked him out of the business and took on the responsibilities myself. It felt liberating to take charge, but it also scared me. I was now fully responsible for everything, but I was determined to prove I could handle it. When I returned home that night, Amanda was once again on the couch, and I knew I had to confront the reality of our marriage. I could see the frustration in her eyes, but my resolve was stronger than ever. "Amanda, I need to talk to you." She looked up, annoyance flickering across her face. "What is it now, Jake? Can't you see I'm busy?" "Busy? You're busy scrolling through social media while I'm out there building a future for myself." "You don't seem to care about anything except yourself," I shot back. "Why are you so obsessed with what I do?" She fired back. "I'm not the one who's been distant. You're the one who's acting like a stranger." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "This isn't just about you or me anymore, Amanda. I'm not going to keep pretending everything is fine. I'm building something that doesn't include you because you've broken my trust. You've shown me who you really are, and I can't keep living like this." Her expression shifted from defensiveness to confusion. "What are you saying? Are you saying you want a divorce?" "I'm saying I want to reclaim my life. I'm done being your backup plan." The shock on her face was palpable, and I could see the realization sinking in. She had taken my support for granted, and now that I was stepping into my power, she didn't know how to react. I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I was taking control, but it didn't mean it was easy. Every confrontation chipped away at the last vestiges of the love we once shared. I was ready to embrace my new identity, but it came with the price of leaving her behind. The whirlwind of emotions continued as I faced the reality of not only losing the woman I once loved, but gaining the strength to become the man I was meant to be. I knew the path ahead would be challenging, but I was finally ready to take the leap toward the life I had always wanted. I was forging my way forward, and nothing, not even Amanda, was going to hold me back. In the weeks that followed, Revenant began to take on a life of its own. I poured every ounce of my energy into the renovations, from picking out the decor to designing the menu. I hired a small team to help: bartenders, servers, and a chef who shared my vision for creating a unique atmosphere. The more I worked on the bar, the more fulfilled I felt. It was liberating to finally be chasing my own dreams instead of waiting for someone else to decide my fate. Meanwhile, the dynamic at home with Amanda grew increasingly strained. Her initial shock at our confrontation faded into resentment. I could feel her eyes on me, filled with a mixture of anger and confusion whenever I walked through the door. I tried to keep my distance, focusing on my work and avoiding any conversations that might lead me back into the same arguments. One evening, as I sat in the nearly finished bar, I received a call from my contractor. The grand opening date was drawing near, and he wanted to confirm the final details. As I hung up the phone, I felt a rush of excitement tinged with nerves. I could hardly believe that my dream was coming to fruition, and yet the thought of Amanda being there filled me with dread. When I returned home, Amanda confronted me. Right away. "You're never around anymore. It's like you've completely checked out of this marriage," she said, her voice sharp and accusatory. "I'm trying to build something for myself, Amanda, something that I can finally be proud of. I can't keep pretending everything is okay between us," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is that what you really want, a bar? You're throwing away our life for a stupid dream." She shot back. "It's not just a bar. It's my escape from you and everything you've put me through. I'm taking control of my life." Her expression shifted between anger and hurt. "Fine, go ahead, but don't expect me to be there cheering you on if this is how you treat me." I could feel the weight of her words, but I pushed it aside. I had to stay focused on my goals. I would not let her guilt trip me into feeling bad for wanting to thrive. As the grand opening approached, I threw myself into final preparations. I had done everything on my own, and I was proud of what I had accomplished. The day of the event, the bar looked stunning, warm, inviting, with ambient lighting and a menu that spoke of creativity. I was nervous but also thrilled. I had invited friends, family, and even a few local influencers in hopes of making a buzz for the bar. But Amanda was a no-show. I had expected her to at least make an appearance, even if it was to support me out of obligation. However, when she didn't arrive, I felt a pang of disappointment. It solidified the feeling that our marriage was crumbling before my eyes. The opening night was a whirlwind. The place was packed and the atmosphere was electric. I mingled with guests, pouring drinks and soaking in the joy of the night. Every laugh, every toast, every compliment from patrons felt like a victory. I was finally living the life I had always dreamed of, and it felt amazing. As the night wore on, I caught a glimpse of Mark in the crowd. He had come to show his support, and I smiled in relief. He was still a friend, despite the earlier fallout. "Man, this place is incredible. I can't believe you did all of this without me," he said, giving me a hearty slap on the back. "Yeah, well, I didn't need anyone holding me back. I had to do this for myself," I replied, feeling a surge of pride. But as I looked around, my gaze fell on a familiar figure standing at the back of the bar. Amanda had finally shown up, and I could see her standing there, arms crossed, a scowl on her face. The sight of her filled me with a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but mostly a desire to confront the reality of our situation once and for all. I walked over to her, trying to keep my composure. "So, you decided to come after all," I said, my voice steady. "Yeah, well, I thought it was important to see what you've been pouring all your time into," she replied, her tone icy. "Are you here to support me or to criticize me?" I asked, feeling a flash of irritation. "Why should I cheer for something that's pushed us apart?" She shot back, her voice rising slightly. I took a deep breath, fully aware that the tension between us was palpable. "This isn't about you, Amanda. I've spent too long living in your shadow, and I'm done being your backup plan. This is my time." She looked taken aback, and for a moment I thought I might see a glimmer of understanding in her eyes, but then the defensiveness crept back in. "You think you can just cut me out of your life? It doesn't work like that. We're still married. Not for much longer if you keep acting like this. You've made your choices, and now I'm making mine," I replied, my voice steady despite the rush of emotions. I could see the hurt in her expression, but I didn't waver. I was finally standing my ground. I had taken back my power, and I was not going to let her manipulate me any longer. As the night continued, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. Revenant was a success, and I was finally embracing my freedom. I had taken control of my own life, and I was ready to let go of the chains that had bound me to a toxic relationship. The feelings of anger and betrayal would always linger, but I was done being the victim. I was ready to embrace the new chapter ahead, even if it meant leaving Amanda behind. I had built something beautiful for myself, and I wouldn't let anyone, especially her, take that away from me. I was reclaiming my identity, and there was no turning back now. The days following the grand opening of Revenant were a whirlwind of activity and excitement. The bar quickly garnered a reputation for its vibrant atmosphere and unique cocktails. It felt surreal to walk into a space that I had built from the ground up, where laughter and music filled the air, and I was the one in control. However, even in the midst of this newfound success, Amanda lingered in my thoughts like an unwelcome shadow. Despite how well Revenant was doing, she still resided in our shared home, and tensions simmered beneath the surface. I had hoped that my success would spark some kind of realization in her, but instead, she seemed more determined than ever to lash out at me. Amanda would often make cutting remarks whenever I returned home late from the bar, and the emotional distance between us grew even wider. One evening, after a particularly busy night, I arrived home to find Amanda waiting for me. She was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, with an expression that screamed confrontation. I sensed the storm brewing. "Jake, can we talk?" she said, her voice dripping with irritation. "Sure, what do you want to talk about?" I replied, bracing myself for another round of accusations. "About this bar of yours. You've completely abandoned everything we built together for a stupid dream," she snapped. "Stupid? This is my life's work, Amanda. I've worked harder than I ever did for you," I shot back, my frustration boiling over. "You think this is all so easy for me, watching you throw yourself into this place while I'm left alone?" she retorted, her voice rising. "Alone? You're the one who made the choice to betray me. I was alone long before I opened this bar," I countered, feeling the anger surge within me. Her face twisted with indignation. "It was a mistake, Jake. You keep saying that, but you don't care about repairing things between us." "Repairing? You want to fix things after what you did?" I could feel my pulse racing. "You don't get to have it both ways. You can't cheat on me and then act like I owe you a second chance." Her eyes flashed with rage. "You're being so dramatic. I didn't want to hurt you. I was lonely." "Lonely? This is the life you chose. You had everything and you threw it away for a fling. I won't let you manipulate me into feeling guilty for moving on," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not manipulating you, Jake. I just want us to be a family again," she pleaded, her tone softening slightly. "Family? You destroyed that, Amanda. You've shattered any chance we had to be a family, and now I'm focused on building my own future without you," I declared, standing firm. The silence that followed was thick with tension. I could see the realization dawning on her face. She could not force me back into a mold that I no longer fit. I felt a mix of sorrow and relief as I recognized that I was finally standing up for myself. "Maybe you should just move out then," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I will. I need to figure out what's next for me," I replied, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. Instead of retreating to my old ways, I embraced the idea of moving out. I had been stuck in this stagnant relationship for too long, and I was ready to break free. As soon as I could find a place, I'd be gone. I had built my own life at Revenant, but now I needed a home that reflected the new chapter I was entering. That night, I went to bed with a strange sense of peace. I was finally in control of my destiny, and I could feel my emotional burden slowly lifting. I had spent so long feeling hurt and betrayed, but now I recognized that I was stronger than I ever thought possible. The following days were filled with packing and searching for a new apartment. I found a small place not too far from the bar, and it felt exhilarating to think about starting fresh. I would finally have my own space, free from the weight of my past with Amanda. As I prepared to move out, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I had learned through this painful experience. I realized that I had allowed myself to be defined by someone else's actions for far too long. While the betrayal had cut deep, it had also ignited a fire within me to reclaim my identity. I was no longer the passive husband. I was a man ready to take charge of his life. The day I moved into my new apartment felt like a rebirth. Everything was new and fresh, and I relished the independence that came with it. I was finally able to breathe without the weight of Amanda's betrayal hanging over me. But even amidst my newfound freedom, I knew that I would have to confront her one last time. I owed it to myself to have a final conversation and lay everything out on the table. It was time for both of us to move on, and I needed to ensure that we both understood that this was the end of our journey together. I wanted to walk away with my head held high, ready to embrace whatever came next. It was time to close the door on the past and step into a brighter future, one that was entirely mine. I was ready for the next chapter of my life, and nothing would hold me back. The day of the final confrontation with Amanda arrived, and I felt a mix of apprehension and resolve. I wanted to ensure that I said everything I needed to say and left no room for misunderstandings or regrets. I had moved into my new apartment, and each corner of the space reminded me of the life I was now constructing for myself. I called Amanda and asked her to meet me at a nearby coffee shop, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of our shared home hanging over us. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a surge of determination. It was time to take charge of my narrative and say goodbye to the past. When Amanda arrived, she looked different. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were puffy from lack of sleep, and she wore an expression that was both anxious and defensive. It was clear that she had been affected by everything that had happened, but I was no longer the man who would comfort her. I was ready to face her head-on. "Thanks for coming," I started, my voice steady as I gestured for her to sit. "Jake, I don't know what you want to say, but I hope we can fix this," she replied, her voice pleading. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to be clear and firm. "I don't want to fix this, Amanda. This isn't about repairing our marriage. It's about acknowledging what's happened and moving forward separately." She looked taken aback, her eyes widening in surprise. "But I thought we could work through it. I'm sorry for what I did. I've been reflecting and I realize how much I messed up. I appreciate that you're taking some responsibility, but the damage has been done. You chose to betray my trust and it shattered everything we built together. I can't go back to pretending that everything is okay," I said, feeling the weight of my words. Her face crumpled and I could see the hurt behind her eyes. "You make it sound so final. What about the good times? What about us?" She pressed, desperation creeping into her voice. "The good times were real, but they don't erase the hurt you caused. I spent so long trying to hold on to those moments, thinking they would bring us back together. But all they did was delay the inevitable. I can't keep living in the past," I replied, my heart pounding. "I still love you, Jake," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I loved you too, but love isn't enough when trust is broken. I need to focus on my future now, on building my life without the shadow of your betrayal hanging over me," I said, the resolve in my voice unwavering. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But I pushed it aside, reminding myself of why this conversation was necessary. I've found a new place and I'm finally taking control of my life. I want to embrace this new chapter fully. I had to leave the past behind to find my future," I continued. There was silence between us, heavy with the weight of our shared history. Amanda looked down at her hands, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had settled upon her. "I understand," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just didn't think it would end this way." "I didn't either, but sometimes things don't work out as we plan. We have to accept that and move on," I replied, feeling a sense of finality settle over the conversation. I could see the acceptance begin to wash over her, and I realized that this was a turning point for both of us. "I hope you find happiness, Amanda. I truly do," I added, my voice softer now. "You too, Jake. I hope you achieve everything you want," she replied, fighting back tears. We sat in silence for a moment, each of us reflecting on what had been and what was to come. I felt a bittersweet sense of closure as I prepared to leave our shared history behind. It was time to embrace the new life I had worked so hard to build. Finally, I stood up and took a deep breath. "Goodbye, Amanda. Take care of yourself," I said, turning to walk away. As I stepped outside, a rush of fresh air filled my lungs, and I felt lighter than I had in years. I was ready for whatever came next, armed with the lessons I had learned through the heartbreak. I had reclaimed my identity, built a successful business, and emerged from the ashes with renewed strength. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I was no longer a man defined by betrayal. I was a man who had risen above it. I had discovered the importance of self-worth and resilience, and I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. Revenant was more than just a bar. It was a symbol of my rebirth, a reminder that even after betrayal I could rise, rebuild, and thrive. I felt ready to write my new story, one that didn't include Amanda but was rich with promise and possibility. As I walked towards my new apartment, I knew that I was free, free to pursue my dreams and find happiness on my own terms. The future was bright, and I was excited to see where this new path would lead me.